this is indeed. So honored to have a few minutes to kind of speak to you guys. How you guys doing? Doing all right? Feeling blessed? So this is actually a pleasure of ours to be here. We heard about the event. Obviously, we didn't know exactly what to expect, but we wanted to come and check it out because the thing that actually drew us to actually come were the particular people that were being, the particular people's history and culture that was being addressed, being the natives or the Indians, and also blacks and so-called African Americans, right? So again, like he said we are representatives of our nation. We know ourselves to be actually what's called Yasharala. Anybody ever heard of Yasharala? Anybody? Raise your hand if you've heard of Yasharala. Now, here's the thing. You have heard of Israel, right?
Yeah.
Right? Well, Israel is a modern day rendition of an ancient word from another ancient language, a language which you guys will probably know and call today Hebrew. Actually, way back then it was called something totally different, right? And Yasharala is what Israel is today, but with it in its original language, you can begin to dissect it and see exactly what it means. So Yasharala means Yahweh, or the Eternal's prince, meaning an heir to rulership of power, God meaning power. So what does this mean when we put it all together? You're talking about eternity, the eternal. You're talking about people who are heirs to rulership, to the throne of the earth, right? And a powerful people. A people that were powerful not only on a physical level, but also powerful on a spiritual level. And when we speak of spirit, we're talking about this right here, right? So, you'll find historically that the so-called indigenous people, also the name Indian or the term Indian actually have said to have derived from something. Let me ask you a question before I give you the answer. Does anybody know what the word Indian actually means? I do. Go ahead.
Native Indians, supposed to be.
You said Native Indian?
Native of India, supposed to be.
Native of India. Okay, now do you know at that time that they say that Columbus stumbled upon this land of the people and thought it was India? At that time, you know that what we know today as India wasn't even called India. They didn't call themselves India at that time. So that's not true, right? But the term Indian, originally Indios, meaning people of God. They were known as people of God, God's chosen people, right? Couple of things, because I don't have much time. I'm going to kind of connect the dots. Obviously, a lot of black people, we've attached ourselves to the name Africa, not really wholeheartedly understanding and knowing where the term Africa came from. But let's kind of get rid of the terms for a second and the labels, right? Let's just look at the people that we now know today as so-called African Americans and blacks. We do know that historically, some of them came over on slave ships. But as I spoke to the brother and I spoke to a few others, there's also the information, and it's an historical fact, that there were also some of those same people that were already here before those slave ships started coming over here. Now let's connect the dots and let's figure this out. What could be the possible explanation of there already being black people here, being indigenous to the land? You hear terms like Moor, right? Which is associated with those that are indigenous to whatever land, this land in particular. But then we also know about the Moors over in Europe, right? The ones that ruled throughout what we know as the Dark Ages and established the civilization that you see now in Europe, right? So, connecting the dots, what happened was this. You had a people who had come to this land to live long before the so-called Europeans of today actually came over or brought any of them over, right? You had a people who were melanated. They weren't necessarily all dark, and they weren't necessarily super light, but you had melanated people. There's so many things I would like to talk about, but I know I don't have much time. All to say this. What's the explanation? These people are the same. So-called blacks and so-called indigenous people of the Americas are the same people. Goes way back to Yasharala. A whole nation of people that knew themselves. You probably know them as the nation of Israel, the children of Israel. That split a long time ago, right? Into two different kingdoms known as the Northern and the Southern Kingdom. The Southern Kingdom predominantly making up what you know today as so-called blacks or African Americans, as you say. And the Northern Kingdom known today as the indigenous people, the Indians, the people of God, who were once a nation, and in around the year about 722 BC, after a captivity, because what you'll find out when you go and do a little bit of digging, this isn't our first captivity right here. This is our last captivity as a people. And this would be a captivity that we would have to serve together as a people. But the first captivity that we were in as a complete people was in Egypt. The reason why when you see on the walls of Egypt, you don't see people that lack melanin. You see Hebrews who are dark. Same reason why all throughout the Americas you have pyramid mounds right here in North America. You have them pyramids all throughout Central and South America. Why? Because the same people that built the pyramids all throughout the Americas, guess what? Those are the same people that were building the pyramids in Egypt. Now, I don't know if you're connecting the dots just yet, but I'm going to help you out. Now, let's put all of this together. The people had differences to the point where we began to feud with one another. After the Egyptian captivity, predominantly the Northern Kingdom, the northern portion of the kingdom known as the indigenous people of the Americas, went into captivity under the Assyrian Empire. Once they were released from that captivity, they came back to their land, Samaria being their capital, only to find that there were another people there that were placed in their land. So they came over, before they came over, they devised something. They said, well, let us go somewhere else because we can't go to our own home. Where can we go? Well, we know about this place called the Americas today, right? We know about this place, and the reason why they knew about it was because their forefather Solomon was the first to actually come over to this land and take, precious jewels and gold and silver and various different exotic animals, and he would come over here and he would bring them back. And it's consistent with what Magellan says as far as the time of how much time it took him to get over here and come back. And then it also is documented how those people did the same thing. They say, well, we know this place, that there's no one that's living on this landmass. So there we'll go. And when we go there, we'll keep our customs. Because we're talking about culture. We'll keep our culture. So when they came over here, they were keeping the same culture. The reason why they wore fringes. The reason why they kept so many of the same days that you could actually find in the Holy Bible. Same reason why they identify so much with the specific people that were in the West predominantly. Because we were actually all throughout Africa scattered. But we were predominantly in West Africa. Keeping a lot of the very same customs because we were the same people. But it had been a long time since we had operated as a complete nation of people. So you know how it is. You're talking about a couple of years. You're talking about some decades. You're talking about a couple of 100 years. And we began to look at ourselves like we were a totally different people. But it's the same reason today. Thank you so much.
How about a great big round of applause?
All right.
Let me